Hello, I'm Roberta Winters, past president of the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township and the current president of the League of Women Voters of Delaware County. As you are aware, gun violence in our country is a hot topic. You see it on television, and on newspapers, and all over social media. Today, we are here to listen to two individuals who are keenly aware of the issues. Aleem Howell, who was my guest in the past, approached me recently to do a show specifically related to gun violence in our youth. A student intern, Martina Mercerel, who has worked with me on this issue, participated in ceasefire panels, and recently was part of a statewide webinar on the League's latest revision to our gun violence position in Pennsylvania, has also joined me today. Let me begin by having each of them introduce themselves and share how they became interested in the topic. Let us first hear from Aleem Howell, who initiated our show for today. Welcome, Aleem. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you became interested in this topic?
Yes, thank you, Roberta, for having me again. It's good to be with you both. Aleem Howell, community activist and advocate, a part of the nonprofit organizations Race for Peace Committee and Urban Navigation. Race for Peace was formed to try to bridge the gap between police and our community members in the community, and Urban Navigation is a youth organization specifically to try to combat gun violence and also do bike and gun education training.
Keeps you very busy, Aleem. And now, Martina, can you tell me what you would like to about yourself and your passion for this topic?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Ms. Winters. So hi, everyone. My name is Martina Besserell. I am 17 years old, and I'm going to be a senior, which is really shocking. I go to Radnor High School, but I was originally born and raised in Florida and moved here 3 years ago. So a lot of the experiences that I bring to the table and the reason to why I'm passionate about gun violence stems from my background.
Now, as you have explored gun violence among youth, what would you like to share with our audience, Aleem?
So the youth of gun violence, like in your age group, Martina, sometimes with our youth, they have access to guns easily. Mm-hmm. And then when you see it, not just in Philadelphia, but also throughout the counties too, you see youth being actively involved with incidents of gun violence. Philadelphia and the politicians and the police, they say that it's going down. But to me, I don't feel like it's going down, and others would probably feel the same way. It might be a certain percentage point that we're at where it is a lot lower and it is a lot better. But then again, more than 100 homicides and murders for gun violence involving youth to adults, that's still really, really bad. And that's where we're at now with it. And when you look at, say, the Philadelphia Police website and you look at the statistics on how many homicides they are so far during the year, it's still over 100. And I've said that numerous of times before. Anything over 100 gun violence crimes and murders, that's still really bad. And I think the Philadelphia and throughout the counties, they have to get that under 100. That's my number, under 100. None at all, but then in reality, under 100.
Right. We all agree that one incident is one too many. Mm-hmm. But I would like the perceptions that we found from your research, Martina, that you found last year, mm-hmm. told a different story. Can you share that with us?
Yes, of course. So I want to bring to your attention slide number 1. So as we can see, throughout the 21st century, firearms have become the leading cause of death for young people and for a bunch of different kinds of people, and it even surpassed car accidents, which is crazy. The rates of gun violence have also steadily increased, and this trend, it reached its ultimate peak during COVID-19, which is like in 2020 in quarantine, when social isolation, economic stress, and also limited access to support groups all contributed to a rising increase of shootings and also firearm-related deaths.
Does this surprise you, Aleem?
It doesn't surprise me because as I said before, it's just like, gun violence, it's like an everlasting thing throughout our state of Pennsylvania. It seems like it never stops. And it starts at the top with our political government. To say really, when I had my meetings with local elected officials and lawmakers and stuff throughout Montgomery, Delaware, southeastern Pennsylvania, what they all basically said was, it really goes back to Donald Trump. And no matter who you voted for, it doesn't matter at this point, but that's who it goes back to, is the Trump administration has to try to combat the gun violence. That's just what I've been hearing throughout Philadelphia and the counties and their political offices. So when I had meetings with their staff members and stuff, that's basically what they said. It's in Congress, the Senate, but then it all goes back really nowadays is to the Trump administration, because that's who's our president now.
Okay. Well, as you're both aware, there's a great deal of resistance to regulating gun ownership. Many people use the right to bear arms as provided in our Constitution as a means to limit our national, state, and local governing bodies from restricting guns. What's your position about gun regulation, Aleem?
For gun regulations, I feel like there's a lot of the red flag laws and laws that are being done and that already have been done and they've been implemented in the system, but it doesn't seem like it's working. My thing is, when I talk to politicians, or when I used to talk to politicians, I would say that how hard is it to get the illegal guns off the streets? That's the whole point. If there were less guns on the street, especially the illegal guns, then there'll be less crime. Then no one will be able to have access to a gun from youth to adults. That's my whole thing. They have to keep working at something, a law, to keep the illegal guns off the streets and get the guns off the streets, basically. And so far, it seems like they said the Second Amendment right is kind of blocking that, because people want to have the right to bear arms, which is, people are entitled to do that. But then again, that's still not going to stop the violence of gun violence. It has to be some way where it's extremely harder to get a gun.
Martina, do you believe there are common sense gun regulations that could be put into place to reduce gun violence? And just what might they be? And is there data that would support some different kinds of regulation?
Yes, I 100% believe that there are a lot of common sense regulations that can be implemented to reduce gun violence. So these could include background checks on gun sales, having extreme risk protection laws, secure storage and child access prevention laws, and also addressing socioeconomic disparities, which a lot of people tend to leave out. So now, let me bring your attention to this graph that compares US gun death rates with Australian ones. So once Australia implemented strict gun regulations in the year 1996, which you can see, they implemented a lot of regulations which included banning several types of firearms, restricting all firearms, and also having a minimum age of 18. Finally, they also had a strict uniform firearm storage requirement. So we can definitely see that once they implemented all of these regulations, gun rates started decreasing.
Aleem, based on our previous interview, I know you've spoken to many law enforcement officers as well as legislators in this area. And what do you believe their role should be in reducing gun violence?
With police officers, and it starts from the superintendents and the chiefs and lieutenants, sergeants, it starts with the top cops. What they could be doing more, they could try to promote and put out into the communities, we want to collect people's guns, especially throughout Philly. There should be more gun buyback programs, more gun buyback events, and even in the county, some way, somehow, people can turn in their guns willingly without any repercussion for it. And I've said that before a lot too, but that's the truth. If there's more gun buyback events and more promotion throughout even the county, in the main line and all that, it just should be more ways to try to take people's guns in a legal way, but without forcing it. But then they just have to get these guns off the streets so people won't be hurting people, basically.
Have access.
Right.
Martina, the League of Women Voters recently updated its position on gun violence by focusing on the issue through a public health lens. So in other words, not just regulation and enforcement. Just how does this work if you use public health to reflect on gun violence?
Yes, of course. So the public health approach to gun violence, it technically means shifting the focus from pure politics to prevention by treating gun violence like any other public health crisis. So for example, depression. It also follows 4 clear steps. So first, surveillance, identifying the problem, which in this case would be gun violence, and also collecting data to understand what, where, how, and when gun violence happens. Second, having risk factors identification, which looks at the underlying causes and conditions that make gun violence more likely and more prone to happen. Thirdly, intervention and evaluation, where researchers test and analyze strategies to see, hey, what actually works and what actually doesn't. And then finally, implementation, which means that you take all of these proven strategies and puts them into practice in communities. For example, socioeconomic communities that are more prone to violence. And by following all of these steps, the public health approach, it offers a practical and evidence-based framework for addressing gun violence and can help reduce the rates of gun violence.
Wow, I know you're familiar with schools too, since you're a high school senior coming up.
Yes.
And you've been concerned for a long time about making sure our schools are safe for students. And I think that's probably part of your Florida background.
Yes.
Can you explain how a public health approach might work in a school setting?
Yes, of course. So in schools, the public health approach to gun violence uses a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary prevention. So the primary means stopping gun violence before it even starts. So this could be through conflict resolution, anti-bullying programs, anonymous reporting, like Safe to Say PA, and stronger mental health resources. Secondary, this means supporting at-risk students with threat assessments, small group counseling, mentoring, and family partnerships, which could be like red flag. And then tertiary, responding after incidents with trauma-informed care, crisis teams, and having long-term counseling. So this connects to the whole school, whole community, and whole child, which is a WSCC model, which links safety, well-being, and academics all together. So schools can also review policies like lockdown drills, secure entry, and referral systems to fill in the gaps. And because gun violence affects entire communities, not just specific people, there should be prevention that's community-based and trauma-informed involving families, local organizations, and law enforcement to reduce risks and also support healing as a community and as a whole.
Well, Elaine, what do you think about this kind of an approach? Do you think it's a way to seriously address these issues that you've been experiencing?
Right. The way to seriously address the issue with the youth in schools, that's it's kind of like an example in the Upper Darby School District. They have the gun detection system. So then when the kids walk into the school and your age group and stuff, and they walk in and stuff, they have the metal detection or the gun detection system so they can look out for anything like a weapon and a gun especially. So if that's in a lot more schools, I think that can really help because then it's no way to prevent that. So like a kid can't sneak a gun in the school or any type of weapon. It's the gun detection systems that can stop that in the schools from K through 12.
Okay, well, thank you for your perspective, Elaine. As you're both aware, there are many approaches being tried to curtail gun violence. Actually, after the record-setting years for violence that we experienced during the COVID epidemic, there is some good news. Recently, the Inquirer featured some amazing data as captured on the slide that you see. It shows that since 2023, there has been a 42% reduction in gun violence, 38% reduction in death by fire alarms, and a 12% decline in violent crime since 2023. Now, I know, Aleem, you said that, these numbers don't really reflect what you've seen on the street, but do you have any other reactions to this decline?
To be honest, I don't think there is a real decline. I mean, there is technically a real decline, but in reality, it's not a real decline because the numbers are still over 100. These percentages and stuff, it has to be under the 50 percentile. It said 42, but even that's still a lot. Anything with 100 homicides or more, that's terrible. Yeah. That's terrible. And on the news, there's still mass shootings. There's still stuff happening. It seems like it's going down, and it is, but then I don't think they really put a real dent in it. Like, say, in the years to come, there's 50 or less homicides in reality with gun violence. Now, that would be really good.
That's like one a week would be a miracle.
Right. And then that would barely even happen. And then eventually it would be once every 2 months or something. Mm-hmm. They have to get to that type of level. And that's what it is with the percentage.
Well, Martina, I think some of the decline that have been reported have been a result of a lot of money being spent as part of the governor's initiative. This is with Governor Shapiro. And I've tried to capture this on that slide that hopefully our audience will be able to see. As part of a $600 million effort to prevent gun violence, these were some of the areas in which the funds were invested. He spent $85 million on what they call VIP grants that were specifically for projects statewide. He also spent $11.5 million building opportunities through out of school time, so to keep the kids busy through this boost program after school so they don't get into mischief. He spent another $5 million to increase the nonprofit security grant fund for places of worship and community centers, again, where kids hang out. And finally, the Pennsylvania Office of Gun Violence Prevention was reopened to collaborate a statewide strategy because that was shut down for a few years. So we have a lot of money being spent. Mm-hmm. What's your reaction to this investment? Do you think it seems fit to a kind of a public health approach, or is just more of the same old stuff?
Yes, so I definitely think that this really does fit the public health approach. I could understand why some people would say, oh, it's just like the usual spending, but I do see some parallels. For example, the VIP grant and the Boost program, for example, they focus on prevention by giving communities and students positive outlets, like you said, to not get into mischief, to actually have stuff to do instead of going out and buying guns. For the other example is a nonprofit security fund. So this feels more like a secondary prevention since it protects places that are at higher risk. And reopening the Office of Gun Violence Prevention is more coordination and policy, which is a key for long-term solutions. So overall, I think that it's pretty good to see money going where it's supposed to be going, such as prevention, instead of just reacting after the fact.
Well, Aline, some of these funds have also been spent in training for, like, they had 4 classes of additional state police officers, and they recruited more law enforcement officers at the municipal level throughout the Commonwealth, whether it's Radnor or Philadelphia. Do you think that additional funding for law enforcement will help?
Yes, because what I've been told too by Delaware County political representatives, they said that sometimes there's less police force. Even in Philadelphia, Delco, they're not much. There needs to be more police officers on patrolling the streets and stuff. And they said there hasn't been a lot of police officers nowadays. So they have to hire more police officers, basically, because more police, the safer the streets are, we hope. But then again, the money and stuff, there's been money and stuff spent, millions of dollars for the gun violence programs and stuff. But some of us, we still don't see a huge dent, though, even with the funds. But even if they hire more police officers, there has to be more strict ways of policing without being too controversial, and there has to be way more strict laws on these guns to take them off the streets. That's the only way it would work. Old school, strict, that's the only way.
Okay, so you're looking, in my mind, at a combination of stronger rules and laws and stronger enforcement.
Right.
So, now, in conclusion, I would like to have Martina share a little bit today about the new position of the League of Women Voters of the United States that basically was developed by study and consensus. And this was before we changed our position to reflect a public health oversight view, or a lens, as we like to say. It was revised several times. In our opinion, it still lacks what we would like to see in Pennsylvania, which is that public health focus. So I think this, Alim, speaks probably to some of the same positions that you would see as relevant. Martina, would you read it for our audience?
Yes, of course. The League of Women Voters of the United States believes that the proliferation of handguns and semi-automatic assault weapons in the United States is a major health and safety threat to its citizens. The League supports strong federal measures to limit the accessibility and regulate the ownership of these weapons by private citizens. The League supports regulating firearms for consumer safety. The League supports licensing procedures for gun ownership by private citizens to include a waiting period for background checks, personal identity verification, gun safety education, and annual license renewal. The license fee should be adequate to bear the cost of education and verification. The League supports a ban on Saturday night specials, enforcement of strict penalties for the improper possession of and crimes committed with handguns and assault weapons, and allocation of resources to better regulate and monitor gun dealers.
Well, obviously, there are no simple solutions to this issue. Advocacy regarding common sense gun laws have made a difference. However, together we believe we can make a difference by exploring other options and discussing perspectives. In fact, a recent study in Baltimore has shown that teens are more likely to carry weapons if they're sleep deprived. Data supports relationship between lack of sleep, mental health concerns, and risk-taking behaviors. Perhaps Radnor's latest school start times have made a difference in promoting team safety and needs to be explored elsewhere. If you would like to become more active in civic affairs and help make democracy work, consider joining the League of Women Voters. We are a voice for citizens, and we consider ourselves a force for change. I would like to thank both my guests today, Alan Howell, a citizen advocate for preventing gun violence, and Martina Becerril, who is a student making a difference through the League and other avenues. We are indebted to Radnor Television Network for their continued support of such informational sessions that serve you, the public. As always, we are appreciative of you, our audience, for tuning in, learning more about preventing gun violence, and particularly among our youth. Take care and stay well. Thank you.